Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now to meet our next panel that will put the spotlight on enhancing retail performance, unleashing the power of HR analytics for organization profitability. Ladies and gentlemen, she is head of HR, V-Mart Retail Limited. Please welcome on stage Anjali Goel. Can we make some noise for the head HR, Celio Future Fashion Limited, Binny Ashish. He is head of HR, Consumer Electronics, Reliance Retail Limited. Please welcome Ramandeep Singh. A warm welcome to the head of Analytics and Insights, Titan Company Limited, Santosh Vuppala. Let's raise a cheer for the head of People and Organization Retail at Puma Sports India Private Limited, Venkat Iyer. And ladies and gentlemen, moderating this session, we have Chief Experience Officer, RexEmptor Consult LLP. Please welcome Siju Narayan. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a power-packed panel on stage. Let's collectively put our hands together and welcome them. Can we have a round of applause to welcome our panel and warm them up and warm you up? Ladies and gentlemen, over to the panel, over to Mr. Siju Narayan.
Thank you. Can you folks hear me?
Yep.
I can't hear you. Yes? Good afternoon. It just took me 90 minutes to cover about 8.5 kilometers, so you can, understand the little edginess that I have. But then we've got a fantastic panel on stage. How many of you are from HR? HR tech? Only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how does it work? I count and you raise your hands, or? Okay, cool. So let me start by setting the stage. I would like to ask you, right, as to what is it that you expect out of this session for the next, let's say, 50 minutes. Zero expectations is actually very nice. So the way we are going to run this is, I'll need your help in terms of running this panel discussion. We are not going to sit here and just talk. Game? Game? So what is it that you expect? I can come down. What is it that you expect? Please, someone start. I'm sure when someone starts. Yes, sir. See, I have to force it.
That's fine. So the topic is about the performance and analytics, right? That's what we are referring to. And each organizations are having different ways of connecting performance. So one way of looking at it is that how HR is contributing towards bottom line, right? Is there any way we are able to show that in a strategic meeting to some analytics is something I would like to know, because that's our main question, that is there value add, right? And how we are presenting through analytics.
Anand, you are from Reliance and you're part of which function? Your HR platforms. He's gone directly to the bottom line. I mean, he's ready for the board meeting. Anyone else? No, absolutely. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Is a vast area, right? Because there are so many areas where you can drive analytics from. So which are those key 3 or 4, areas for HR analytics which will be predictive in nature, which can directly impact business? And we say, HR, needs to partner with business for growth. We are no more a support function. We are more like a consultant and catalyst for the growth. So I will look at those 4, 5 key HR analytics.
And can I have a small introduction from you, ma'am?
So I'm Preeti. I head the HR for Sketchers.
For Sketchers,
yeah.
Okay. It's okay. Yeah? The reason why I called out Venkat was, Venkat gets a little upset when he hears competitive names. Anything else? Yes.
I wanted to understand, I'm Siddhant, I'm from Apna. Wanted to understand at the stage of talent acquisition, what is, how are you thinking about utilization of, because it's a people science, I think it's approximate. So how do you sort of bring that whole psychological people science aspect into very key definable metrics that impact bottom line as well as the decision to hire? Because it's difficult to quantify, but I feel that poor hiring decisions lead to significant business impact. But I think that's like I have never been able to put a value to it. How do you do that? Would be very curious to understand that.
Okay. Nirmat, he's part of your gang, right? And he wants free advice in terms of how your entire platform can be done up well, right? RAI, please ensure that you charge these folks. Okay. So we've taken some takeaways, but the way we will run this is we will need a lot of interaction from you, right? So please shout out, even in the middle of a conversation, but politely, right? And we will weave that into the discussion. Does that sound good? I need you guys to be more energetic. Yes? Yes. So then let's start. Now, I come in from a background of customer experience, and Nirmit, आपका तो time आ ही गया है, right? And unfortunately, I'm an oldie. I've been around for about 28 years in the retail sector, so I wish he was around when I was a little younger. But then I hope you have something for me. But I'm also convinced of the fact that customer experience cannot be delivered without employee experience. Employee experience is mandatory. And with employee experience, employee engagement comes into perspective as well. And when you're talking of employee engagement, we are talking about measuring brand employee engagement, and then you're talking about analytics, and then you're talking about insights, and then you're talking about actions being taken on those insights. Now that's essentially what we will be discussing, and as to how those factors impact profitability. So I think that's pretty clear-cut in terms of what is expected out of us out here. So without much further ado, let me start off by requesting the members of the panel for a very quick introduction. Your name, what do you do, and anything else that you might want to add.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Venkat. I'm a part of Puma Sports in India, and I am currently heading the people and organization function for all our front-end employees. So Puma Sports, I'm sure most of you would know about the company. Prior to this, I was with Aditya Birla for about 9 years. So long journey over there. And looking forward to hopefully allowing all of you to walk away from this session with 1 or 2 critical things that all of you can take back to your day-to-day jobs.
Very good afternoon. This is Anjali Goel. I head HR for V-Mart Retail Limited. We have more than 450 locations span India. So I'm basically thank you so much, RAI, for inviting us and waiting for a whole day. I think this is the first time that RAI has been conducting Retail HR Tech Summit. I'm sure it will be a lot of excitement, fun, and a lot of inputs that each one of us will take away. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Binny, Ashish. I have close to 17 years of work experience. I've had the privilege of working with some great organizations like Shopper Stop, Crossword Bookstores, and currently I'm heading the people function at Celio. Celio is a French men's apparel brand. And so thank you for having me here, and I'm really excited to kind of contribute to this entire discussion and learning from all the panelists. So thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ramandeep, and I represent Reliance Retail, Electronics Consumer. So I'm head of HR for them, about 7 years into Reliance. And before that, I was part of Airtel, Samsung, about 23 years of experience. And like everyone, I'm very, very excited to be part of it. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Santosh. I represent Titan, and I head analytics and insights at Titan. I would like to say that my job is actually more that of a storyteller, because there is a lot of joy in teasing out patterns and working with different businesses, functions, to how to increase sales, increase the bottom line, or also optimize. And, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. So can I request a round of applause for the folks out here on stage? Thank you so much. We've got a cross-section of retail formats. We've got a cross-section of experiences, extremely varied and patterned experiences on stage here. So I'm sure we're going to see something quite good at the end of the 50 minutes that we have. Like Anjali mentioned, yeah, retail, HR, tech. Yeah, that's a combination that I've been waiting for a long, long time. I've been in the retail business and the tech industry for quite a long time, and no one's really focused so much on HR tech per se. And probably that's because HR tech has just come of age. And what I really find good about the panel is that we've got someone like Santosh on stage as well, who looks at analytics and insights from a cross-functional area. I hope I'm right, Santosh, right? So when he looks at from a cross-functional area, we'll also get a perspective in terms of how retail HR tech measures up with respect to the other functional tech areas, right? Let's see who is a strong bully and who is a small bully amongst tech. Now, when we talk of HR, is HR a cost function or is it a profit center? Question to the audience. Is HR a cost center or a profit center? Which team do you belong to, ma'am? Awesome. No wonder. That's an excellent answer, right? And the whole question is in terms of how do you connect HR with profitability? Now, let's be honest. Now, that's not something that you very naturally do a connect on. That's not a natural conclusion that one draws in terms of HR and profitability, right? And I'm sure you are all very, very clear of the fact that there are HR practices, HR analytics that help impact the bottom line. Which gets me to the first question. What exactly do you mean when someone says HR analytics? I can start with you, Venkat.
I mean, HR analytics, in my opinion, I think sort of reduces the actual scope of analytics which, say, the HR team can go back and do. There are, I think it's sort of slicing it into fine a slice of the cake, right? So you might end up saying, okay, there is HR analytics, there is talent analytics, there is people analytics, there is productivity which comes in. I'm assuming when we are, at least when we are as the panel over here today, we are trying to say, okay, everything, all these different analytics, we are trying to sort of come back and combine it into this theme of HR analytics. But anything to do with the impact of people to increase business profitability, right? How do we ensure that our entire go-to-market strategy actually materializes through the set of people that we have in the organization, I guess, is HR analytics for me.
And Anjali, is this with the same importance across an employee life cycle? From hiring to, I hate the word firing, but from hiring to, let's say advocacy when he leaves the company?
Yeah, sure.
Does it imply that, there's an equal amount of importance?
Yeah, I think that plays a very, very important role. And actually, it empowers a lot of decision-making right from pre-onboarding to actually exits, It's not only at the time of exit, but I think there's a lot of now data analytics via employees. There's high turnover ratio, designing retention strategies, recruitment processes, training programs, talent management programs. I think there is no end to it. So each day there is new metric that we need to, in fact, doing a project or implementing a new process. I think HR analytics plays a very, very crucial role and helps us to take actually informed decisions. Basically.
Okay. Binny, your thoughts?
So I think HR analytics, like somebody was saying, it's not like HR is no more an HR right now, right? It's not a support function, it's a business function. It is, HR is how you create value to, the marketplace. And HR analytics actually helps us do so. So HR analytics is a powerful tool that helps organization to understand how the investments on people or human capital actually results into profitability. So it's like a magnifying glass, through which we look at the people data, through which the organization or the business leaders or the business function can actually look at the data, optimize workforce strategies. It can transform the raw HR data into actionable knowledge, which in turn will result into profitability so that the business can take smarter and informed decisions. So that's my view on HR analytics.
So essentially, you're talking of a concept similar to an ROI on an employee. So
absolutely. So for me, how I look at HR is, like I said, HR is not HR anymore. It's from the outside to the inside. So we need to look at customers and then come back inside and say that, okay, what do the customers want? What do the investors want? What is their expectation from the organization? And then come within the organization and then look at our analytics and our dashboard and people analytics. So it's not only HR analytics, but a complete wholesome business analytics and people analytics.
So, Ramandeep, does this mean that you are not only looking at from within the organization, but you're looking outside in as well? Do you take consumer inputs, customer inputs, or supply chain inputs into when you finally sit down to decide whether an employee is valuable or not?
Yeah, so everything is interlinked. So you cannot take it in silo, only looking at the HR. So why we do this? We do this for the business outcomes. So it is very, very important to look at it holistically and not limited to only HR processes. Ultimately, everything has to result into the business outcomes. Someone asked in the, here about, which all areas are where this is relevant. I think now there are no areas which are left where analytics is not important. You can look at right from traditionally we have been doing it in the talent acquisition space, or say some of the activities like engagement, retention, but this has gone far beyond. Now the challenge is, are we ready for it? I think there is an internal challenge which we have is how ready as a HR we are in terms of dealing with the data. So that's going to be very, very important. So while we are no more that same HR, I will say we are a far more credible, much more sharper HR if I compare it with last 5 to 10 years. So we need to continuously keep on evolving and take it to really, these terms are going to be more in fashion, I will say, AI or a prompt engineering, but at the same time, our ability to deal with these terms and take the learnings out of it in terms of implementation is going to be very, very critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are stages, right? The descriptive, prescriptive, and then predictive. Now, so I'm not sure if the lady is there who was talking about the predictive part of it, but we'll come to that at a later stage during the conversation, because that's a little high up in the maturity curve. Now, coming to you, Santosh, I mean, these folks, they live, they breathe, they dream HR analytics. But as a person who's seen analytics across functional areas, when did HR analytics actually come to be so important?
Okay, so I'll give a different perspective on how we work at Titan. So let's say we are a sales team, right? And then there is a sales decline, right? Then what would happen? You will have people from different regions or zones or territories, etc., trying to dissect, okay, where is sales declining? Is this certain category? Is there a certain city, etc.? So there is actually a cross-section of people who are coming together. So in Titan, I can't say when, but we have this culture of cross-functional teams. So a lot of times it is actually that there is so much of intertwining between the various functions. So I really don't want to isolate that there is a HR and there is this merchandising function and there is a retail function. It's all like we come as a group, and it's been for a couple of years. I can't really say since when. To give you some examples of what this is, somebody asked a question about, how can we contribute to the bottom line, right? So there are certain, let's say, customers, your cream customers, your top affluent customers, etc., right? So one of the things that we always do is, because obviously the customer is at the center of what we do. So if there are these customers who are engaging or sort of having a sticky relationship with certain RSOs or CROs, the store people, as we say, we constantly analyze how is the customer evolving in her or his journey with us as a brand. Are they buying more? Are they buying more frequently, etc.? The important thing, and when we saw the results, we were really shocked to see when the store staff that this person is engaged with on a constant basis, when they attrite, actually we've seen a significant loss or churn in customers that had led to establishment of, okay, if it's almost like in investment banking, there's an account manager or relationship manager, but we also have that there is a second person who is assigned, so that in case there is attrition, there is something, there is a backup plan in place. Somebody also asked about, what are the three or four big areas, right? So I wouldn't like to say areas in terms of techniques, but if you look at we all understand very well that there is a customer life cycle. The customer is acquired, then he or she grows or nurtures, and there is dormant or lapsed, and we try. So similarly here also we look at an employee from his or her journey throughout. So who are we acquiring? Are we acquiring the right set of people? Employees who are from this college or this degree versus, and as the employees there with us, how is the productivity changing over time? Are there certain dips, which means there is a need for certain intervention to take place? A lot of times, this whole concept about dispersion, there is a group of employees with a certain level of experience, and they are supposed to do something. And we realize that with experience, especially in the retail sector, there is a tendency for some of the senior staff to actually, go after the low-hanging fruits and not really do the heavy lifting. So then our team, along with the HR team and the retail team, is chalking out a plan as to how should we do the staffing, how should we assign targets, how should we balance the load thereabout. So I would say, again, to answer your question, it's been a journey over a lot of years. We don't see that HR is a function which is different from the business. We all are, working together to either increase sales or increase bottom line. So,
sure. No, I get that, and it's evolved over a period of time. Now, my question for Venkat, you is, now when we talk about HR analytics, when you are talking about measuring people or measuring the performance of people, there's an overlap. Because you're probably looking at the sales as well, because revenue per employee could be a KPI that you're tracking. So how do you ensure that you are able to do so with high fidelity, and there is overlap, but overlap that is acknowledged? Because there'll be overlap across sales, there could be overlap across marketing KPIs, or am I wrong that there are no overlaps?
No, so I think everything is intertwined, right? And very similar to what the Titan example which was given, that there are always going to be cross-functional teams doing everything, right? So any employee who's there in the front end will have some overlap in terms of marketing, in terms of sales, in terms of, there's always going to be an impact around it. So if I can sort of maybe take some examples of how we end up going back and looking at it at Puma. So very similar to, again, the Titan example of saying high, the customers who keep repeat customers, right? And customers are coming in and having high amount of sales. So how many times are they coming back to the store? How many times have they been reached out to? Have there been some sort of initiatives to get them back into the store, right? So there would be some amount of marketing aspects around it, which ends up coming in. We go back and talk about new customer acquisition. At Puma, there is this concept called Puma on the move. So POTM is a big concept that started off during the pandemic. So it's basically saying, rather than getting customers into the stores, how do we get Puma closer to the customers, right? And most companies will go back saying, okay, it's e-commerce, omni-channel would be one way to do it. But one of our methods to do it is actually set up small Puma kiosks in different societies and actually try and capture customers at their residence, get as close to the customers as possible, right? That's the entire concept over there. So there are a lot of analytics which you end up going back and saying, in this entire concept of POTM, what type of customers are coming in, how many of them are actually repeat customers. So there is quite a lot of work which has happened during, or a lot of work which has happened on analyzing the customer acquisition, as well as the impact which a sales associate will have at this particular center.
And that flows back into that particular sales guy's performance or that particular employee's performance.
Yes, absolutely. It flows back into his performance in terms of incentives, in terms of annual appraisal, in terms of potential assessments for next level growth. Everything sort of flows back into that.
So which gets me to this point that there is then a humongous amount of attributes that you can potentially measure and track. I think it's unimaginable in terms of the number of employees, or if I'm an employee with, let's say, Puma, Venkat would look at me and say, here comes a wonderful little target for 90 attributes to be measured on. Possible, right? Maybe the way I put my foot forward could also be an attribute. Now, in which case, that's fine. In which case, how do you make sense out of it? I would hate to be in your shoes to actually be faced with such a humongous number of attributes on which you can potentially measure your employee. And then you have the board telling you that, please let us know as to how are the employees doing, are they impacting profitability? So how do you go about doing it? Anjali, you want to take a step?
Yeah, I think, not for every reason, example, every matrix, the data is common. So there are a lot of data cross-functioning. For example, if my audit scores are going down, so one is shrinkage is going up. So one is, what Venkat talked about is that from a sales perspective, there are various metrics that we measure. One is attrition. From the HR data, one is attrition, what's the health of the store, basically. Is there too many infant attrition, employee turnover, or there is shrinkage is high, their SOP scorecard, which we call it that audit scorecards are low. So I think there is a lot of cross-functional data that we put, but not necessarily all the matrix, because there's humongous of data, and which becomes at times too complicated to put too much of matrix while analyzing a problem of the business. So it depends upon what's the problem. So, and also defining those key matrix for this problem. These are the core 5-6 matrix, along with the business team and the HR or the marketing or loss prevention or the operations team, or in fact, even at times with the merchandising team. It's not necessary people, maybe the inventory also plays a big role. So it depends upon the problem that we need to solve or an initiative that we need to take. So that defines the matrix. I don't think so that for any problem, all the HR matrix or all the business matrix should be combined together, which makes it more complicated, which I feel.
No, absolutely makes sense, because that's the only way to kind of get in some discipline. Now, Binny, when it comes to...
Can I just add?
Yeah, Santosh.
So, interestingly, we realized that while there is a lot of intent to capture a lot of data about our own customers, at Titan we realized we don't have data about ourselves as employees. Like, a lot of times, our own interests are not captured, my aspirations in the next 2 years, 3 years. So there was this initiative about the 100% club, which is basically, can we actually get as much data about our own employees? Like, I only have data points regarding, when was the next last role or last promotion, etc. But I really don't have what they want to do, where do they aspire, do they want to go to certain functions, etc. So one point I would like to add is also invest a lot in collecting as much data about our own employees.
So that's a very, very nice and polite way of Santosh saying, you guys don't have too much of data to, figure out whether I'm good or not. No, but jokes apart, how many of you believe that we've got enough data to make sense of an employee's contribution engagement? No one? Okay. What I wanted to check was, basis what Santosh just said, how many of you believe that the organization today has enough data about an employee to make a fairly sensible conclusion about his or her engagement value. GRV has his hands up first, I'm sure. Anyone else? You do have enough data? Enough data. Santosh, they have enough data. Where's the issue? They have enough data. So where is the issue?
Okay, so one of the things is also the interconnection between different systems. Okay, so of course, if and we all are different in terms of maturity, we all are in different journeys. So first thing is about collecting data, which are across all the aspects: your own performance, your interests, your background, your sense of engagement with the organization, which is your training, your career specializations, etc., how much time you are investing, etc. The other thing that is there is the trying to draw the interconnections between different systems. And okay, some of the challenges that we are grappling with is, for example, what is the ROI from all of the learning initiatives that have happened? So now the thing is getting those dates, getting the participant list. We all sign on papers, but they are not digitized anywhere. So we have no record of. So if there are organizations that have done this much, then it would be, it would be really awesome. Similarly, in terms of incentives, if you look at store staff, right, there is somebody who is, calculating all the incentives. There is somebody else who is, processing payroll. But again, linking these two again. If you look at I+, for example, where an optometrist being present or not present in the store makes a ton of a difference. So trying to link the optometrist availability, which is again in some register or in some other database, how is that related to the sales, and if somebody is present or not. So again, the continuum that you said, right, there is a descriptive, then there is the
prescriptive, and then predictive. Yeah.
Investigative, there's prescriptive and predictive, right? So if I need to actually traverse the whole continuum, then I need to have as much of data. I need to figure out how to make all of these interconnections, and then start, playing, modeling with the data.
No, sure. And I'll come to that point, because when you're talking of data, we are talking about tech to, collect data, analyze data, right? We'll come to that aspect later. But having said this, when you're looking at an employee, you're looking at a contribution of an employee from an individual perspective, right? There are some factors which can be individually identifiable, right? In terms of, let's say, time to hire for that particular employee, or, multiple other factors. And there are some which are derived. For example, if he or she is a member of the store staff, then in terms of the store profitability, shrinkages, there are multiple store parameters or operational parameters to which you can tie them up. So when you run the system within your organization, and this I'll ask both Ramandeep and Binny, is when you do this, do you consciously have these two buckets? And if yes, then what are the top 5 factors that you look for?
So I'd like to answer the question on, the sales team members' profitability and how do you measure their performance and profitability. So when it comes to a store employee's performance, we have like a report card for every employee, every store, every area manager, where we look at, for how long have they been there in the organization, what is your target, what is your achievement, what is your like-to-like growth, what was your growth over last year. So there are a lot of metrics that we look at, and in case if somebody is not performing or some store is not performing, we look at exactly what happened. So there could be various parameters in terms of a dip in performance in case if the performance is not up to the mark. So what is it that we actually need to look at? Was the employee on leave? The attendance track record will actually tell you that. Is the merchandise and the product availability right? Is there some new competition that has just arrived in the market, and are they actually taking away our market share? So there are multiple ways and metrics for one particular employee's performance could be matched to multiple other parameters. And hence we need to, when we're looking at a store profitability or an employee's performance, we need to look at these parameters as well to understand why has the performance improved and what was the reason for the dip in terms of performance. So like I said, in case if the merchandise act is not right or the replenishment is not happening properly, the supply chain is not, is not in line. All these things could be the reason for a growth in performance or a dip in performance, and these are the things that we need to look at. And at Celio, that's what we look at when we look at individual performance of how they've been performing and what is the incentives, ultimately how much are they earning. So this is what we look at Celio.
And how do you cross collaborate or cross connect, or how do you calibrate this? Is this manually, or do you have any technology that's helping you do this?
Yes, so we were doing this manually over a period of time, and now we're looking at a certain tool, like there is Power BI and there is another software that is integrated into the organization. So currently what we are looking at is how the HR platform can be integrated to the ERP system and to the supply chain system to understand, so that the employee at the front end who is trying to achieve his targets and who's wanting to earn his incentives is able to get a complete dashboard and saying that, okay, this is my sale, this is my quantity of products that I have, this is my replenishment cycle that's going to be. And in case if an action needs to be taken immediately, he can actually voice that out. So that is what we're trying to do in terms of integration. Currently, how do we also monitor is by constantly conducting weekly reviews and monthly reviews and hearing the voice of the employee so that it can reach to the head office immediately, and the CXO team members and the SMT team members are a part of this review so that we can directly hear what the front end team is actually talking to us about.
And the employee has the visibility to all these dashboards and parameters?
Yes. So the area manager currently has all the visibility, and through which they do a weekly review call, and they ensure that they also have the right to understand as to, in case, for example, if it's merchandise and stocks, when is it reaching, how is it reaching, if he has surpassed his targets and achievements and he's kind of sold off immediately, and though we have an ARS system in place, but obviously it takes time for the, to reach the warehouse and then reach the store. So at times we also take some calls in terms of how can we actually, airship or send the stocks immediately to the staff so that the employee actually performs, and then he ultimately earns incentives, and ultimately the store is profitable. So that's the whole cycle that we cover.
Sure. Thanks so much, Binny. Ramandeep, you are in a high involvement category. I mean, you manage HR in consumer electronics. I would consider that a high involvement category. So the way you're going to measure or track employee engagement or employee performance could be a little different. So could you just take us through in terms of what is it that you do on a daily basis?
So our journey is slightly on a, I will say, advanced stage. Last 2-3 years, we have done extensive work on the automation side. So our thoughts currently are on how to empower employee rather than only keeping the data static with HR or few people. So we have been trying to work out solutions where we can provide this data live to the employees, and we have been able to successfully do it for one of our businesses, which is on the retail side, on the general trade side. So what it means is the employee himself or herself is able to see how, on a regular basis they are performing, how much incentives are there to be earned, and how much they are likely to earn. That's a very, very live kind of a scenario which we have. So our overall vision for that is how to empower employees to use this data rather than any surprises, which ultimately affects the organization performance. So while it is not fully implemented everywhere, but we have successfully done it for one of our business lines within the electronics. And going by that, we are now looking at replicating the same to other lines of business. So the advantage which we have seen is, rather than we going and talking about what are the incentives, what are the likelihood of employees earning, or for the management, where we are headed for this month, So we are live there. We can anticipate, where we are headed. And during the month, we can do a lot of course correction at the saying certain level of employees, certain pockets, regions, states. So that has been quite a journey for us in terms of managing it a little differently by providing more empowerment and visibility to the employees.
Does it work the same way at Puma?
Yeah, I mean, it may not be at that level where we are saying, at the end of every day, what is it that you've earned, but we are trying to sort of get there eventually. I think that there are a lot of tools which we still need to build in, and in the journey of trying to make sure that employees have visibility of all data, we are at a very, very nascent stage right now. There's a lot more that we need to do in terms of automation, in terms of just getting our basic data out to the employees so that they have a better visibility of what needs to be done.
No, I understand, and I think that's great that at least there is the path towards it, and there's a movement towards it. Anjali, do all your employees know exactly what they are being measured on, or what they're expected to do on what parameters?
Yeah, exactly. They know, and we have now introduced a quarterly check-ins apart from they have their daily huddles or the weekly. But we've also done a sort of not an appraisal basically, but a dip check on where are you, how have you defined your KPIs, what are the metrics. In fact, we did a drive, these are the key metrics role-wise, and these are the various reports that you need to see periodically, or some technology or the process. So we've worked a lot on giving that visibility to the employee that this is your KPI, and also at certain roles that we encourage is define your own KPIs, have a look what last year went well, what are the areas of improvement. So by that continuous feedback mechanism, I think we've strengthened a lot in terms of our performance management system.
Kind of aligns very well to what Lalit keeps saying, right? People build businesses, right? End of the day,
yeah,
it's about...
And that's the core, actually. Without that, I think that would not survive. So that absolutely at the store level also, each associate knows where am I, where I need to go, what are the key metrics, how do I measure, where do I see. I think that's there, and that has worked well.
Excellent. So what I see is that there is obviously difference in maturity amongst organizations in terms of the sector that they're in probably, or the way they operate. Some are just physical, some could be omni-channel. There'll obviously be differences in parameters, but it's nice to see that the underlying thought, while Ramandeep called it out as empowering employees, and I'm sure it's the underlying thought behind every one of you in terms of your strategy to make sure that employees contribute the maximum to profitability. Now, shifting gears a little, this is mostly very nice when it comes to the descriptive. Probably prescriptive could be a little different. So if I were to ask you, in that entire continuum journey of descriptive, prescriptive, and predictive, where are your individual brands at? Starting with you, Venkat.
So, so from the three things that you mentioned, 2023, my biggest learning was to add one more analytics over there, which is diagnostics. So, you're talking about what happened, but more importantly, why did it happen? And that learning sort of ended up coming to us in, like I said, for 2023, we were terrible as far as our attrition prediction was concerned, right? So we had a certain number that we went back to business saying, itna percentage attrition is going to happen, and we were way short of that, right? So a lot of our, which is also a very good thing, but then a lot of our sourcing channels, hiring, recruitment strategies were all aligned towards saying we're going to have a much higher attrition than what we ended up actually having. And that diagnostics of saying why did we have X amount of attrition in 2022, that was something which was completely missing when we went back and made a prediction. And I think that's been one of the lessons that we have gone back and learned, saying it's not only a point of saying what happened and what is going to happen in the future, but the why of it is a very critical aspect of actually going back and looking at HR analytics. So as far as going back and looking at analytics, I think we've got the major things which are already covered. So when you're talking about productivity, it would be, per employee, how much sale is happening, salary to NSV, that entire piece, which I think 99% of organizations in the retail space would have it. Some of the new things that we're trying to sort of get into, and again, if I can give you one example, we have now, rather than only looking at manning percentage or productivity percentage for the store as a whole, we're going back and looking at critical time productivity. And when I say critical time is each store, and typically in retail, Monday to Thursday, post 6 p.m., Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sales will always go up, right? And a lot of our manning which happens in the store actually is happening for this critical time, right? And again, each brand might have a slight change here and there, but again, it's large population of organizations are going to function like this. So when we went back and looked at productivity, we started saying, can we look at productivity specifically during this critical period of sale, right? And when we're looking at manning, when we're looking at how many people do we need in the store, what type of people do we need in the store, can we go back and link it back to this critical sale peak period requirement for us? So that's been a change which we have brought in from 2022 onwards, rather than only looking at the bare basic minimum, which is around attrition, which is around infant attrition, etc. We're trying to get into a lot more analysis towards helping the business perform.
So you're kind of knocking on the predictive doors a bit out here and trying to see as to how you could make better sense of the data.
I think we're definitely knocking, but we are still in that journey of trying to get better at it, right? So
sure.
When we are actually going back and predicting, for example, attrition, which is that example which I gave previously, how good are we at actually predicting attrition? And I think more than going back and saying, can we predict X employee is going to leave? I think right now we are at the stage where we're saying, okay, we have a general sense of how many people are going to go back and leave. Okay. Right? And from a retail perspective, what we have found is sales associates and below, it becomes very, very difficult to actually go back and predict saying, will that one employee, Venkat, who's there in a store in Linking Road, is he going to leave? It becomes very difficult for us to do that. And that at least from a Puma perspective, and I'll be really happy if one of the panel members can actually help me out in this point, or someone from the audience. But store managers and above, I think the prediction is a lot more accurate. I think it's a function of what makes the person want to go back and leave. That again is the why, right? The why of the attrition, and how do we go back and predict that?
Thanks. He's just given an idea for another unicorn, which can probably solve his problem, because I'm sure this is not an isolated problem of Venkat/Puma, right? It's, I'm sure, across all brands. Anjali, descriptive, prescriptive, predictive, where are you on the journey?
I think I'll take a cue, like for Venkat said, we also did this project, while we track hourly sales, can we track, sales, hourly manning of the employees, and which helped us defining the manpower planning, especially in areas which are high throughput stores and also low throughput stores, both ways, because generally our focus areas. And also we were facing problems on some weekend sales dipping down, particularly some timing that was there. Generally Saturday, Sunday are, days as retail, there is high footfalls, the sales number are usually high. So we also integrated those numbers of, the employees and helped the sales people also defining their manning, apart from the festival or high season where we do a lot of manning, but then in general also this helped us. So I would not say, any one tool that we use, basically predictive and prescriptive at times complement each other. So if you have to take a decision, at times it is astonishing. Well, we, like Venkat said, we take patterns and define trends and all. Okay, this is an high attrition store or high sales store. Surprisingly, we saw tier 4 cities had much more higher attrition than tier 1. So, at times the data also throws a very different insights, which we also get stuck, the patterns that we are following. There is ever evolving business needs, and the dynamics change at times based on, for us, it is like location to location. When one region also, one location behaves very differently than other region. In Lucknow, if I have more than 25 stores, the behavior patterns are very different. So we can't use those patterns basically both diagnostic perspective and predictive. At times we have to use those matrix to define and come out with some data.
And the way you draw the conclusion is manual? It's a manual
yeah,
deliberation?
we are actually in process of integrating with the business ERP actually, almost there, but right now it's mostly manual. Yes.
Okay. Binny, how does it work at Celio? And where are you in the journey?
So we also use a combination, just like both of them said. It's not just one particular tool that we use. So we use all the three depending on what the situation is. For example, in case if there is, we had a project called as Reboot, where we looked at all the low productive doors and where they were and what was happening to them. So we were looking at what happens, so diagnostic and then predictive and then prescriptive, saying that, okay, these are the things that we should be doing in order to kind of look at moving from a low productive door performance to a high productive door. So we look at a combination of all of them depending on situation by situation, and it's just not one diagnostic tool that we actually use.
Okay. And Ramandeep, from a business perspective, while I consider V-Mart to be a little different from all the other businesses on stage today, is because of the predominant focus on tier 2 and tier 3. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anjali. But then that's typically the way it's done, right? And hence that brings in the difference in the type of employees, and hence how you measure them. So where are you on this journey, Ramandeep, and how do you take care of these nuances?
So like I mentioned, we have done quite a work on this piece in the last 2-3 years. What we are kind of thinking is, how do we look at the behaviors in a different way? There are parameters, there are KPIs which are very clearly in place, which are getting more and more sharper, which obviously evolve over a period of time. They don't remain static. Challenges are different, markets are different, competition is different. So we kind of looking at saying, okay, how do we now, can we do some kind of a prescriptive around the leadership, on the behaviors, situations, how they are being handled. So it's quite a task. It's going to be very, very difficult to first calibrate and arrive at something. But that's the journey which we would like to start, which is not only limited to the store or a field, which is also going to get into the more of the HO functions as well. So there are pros and cons, and the limited kind of a success which may or may not happen, but with technology coming in, there's a lot of hope, and I'm sure, sooner or later, we will have to get into that rather than being very, very subjective about it. Our overall theme of empowerment plus giving transparency to the employees, whichever field they are, I think that's the base of our vision in this area.
No, totally appreciate that. And Santosh, I have a 2-point question for you. The first one being, from a Titan perspective, where are you on this journey? And second is, one of the biggest problems, or one of the biggest stumbling blocks, is in terms of attribution. How do you attribute a certain result to a certain philosophy, right? So, and that, because a wrong attribution can completely, have the results go haywire. So how do you manage that? And I'm asking this to you specifically because you look at loyalty and, at analytics and insights across functions. Yeah? So the first question, where is Titan on this journey?
Okay, so the first thing is, the whole DIPP spectrum, right? I would say we are doing the predictive and prescriptive also. But as in, when we keep doing analytics across, right, there are certain, we keep revisiting each of these. I'll tell you from the first part, right? There's a tendency to actually, so if it is manufacturing, there is this one metric, right? I mean, how many hours spent and the output that is there, right? If you are at corporate, whichever function, there are just a few metrics that is there. But when it comes to the people on the shop floor, right, there's a tendency that we've seen that each of the category managers, for example, has some metric that she or he wants to measure. Then the retail teams have certain metrics that they want to measure. Then there is the online team, there's the omni team, it's about lead conversion, etc. So now we've seen that there is a barrage, like there's just so many metrics, and at last count we saw that some of them had to perform on some 10 to 20 plus metrics. So now there is the thing that can we actually start reducing the number of metrics? We are tracking them on way too many metrics, which is really hard for them. Second thing is also focusing more on the lead metrics versus, I mean, it's easy to track the sales and, you know, ticket size and buyers, etc. But trying to see if they have actually done enough number of calls, have they followed up on enough number of accounts, etc. So that is one thing. So we are trying to revisit if we are actually collecting too much or imposing too much. Even in terms of the other part, right? I think Venkat talked about trying to, the inquisitive, the why attrition, etc. So here also we are trying to see how we can connect various systems and see how it can be more meaningful, more seamless when we are trying to understand the impact. Coming to your second question in terms of attribution, I think that's the holy grail. I mean, every team would want to say that their efforts have actually yielded. So, of course, there is this whole test control methodology which every industry follows this, which is that I do the experiment here and I have a sister store where I've not done the experiment trying to isolate. We've not, I wouldn't say that we've cracked this piece where, you know, telling that this much of the success during a scheme or a discount is purely due to retail effort, this much is due to marketing. In fact, when we have done that, that has actually led to a lot of fights. For example, it's always said that buyer retail marketing ka problem hai, for the ticket size it is retail. So now what we've done is we sort of try not to attribute, because again it is very, very difficult and maybe a futile exercise which is just leading, but trying to actually approach it from a holistic perspective, whether, for example, if it is a store performance, right, there is the merchandising which needs a review, there is the retail that needs a review, there is of course the marketing that needs a review. So we try to look at it. I don't know if I've answered you the question, but it's the approach that we've resorted to.
No, you've done a fantastic job of not falling into the provocation. But I think this is good because let's not stir the attribution pot anymore. What you really want to come to now is, since we've got about 3 or 4 minutes remaining, is when you're talking of analytics and you want to make a lot of sense about something, you need data. And when you're talking of lots of data, there's only so much of data that you can physically manage, and then we're talking of technology. Now, the assumption here is you've got a fair amount of retail technology which kind of, you know, supports you from an HR perspective. How does this technology procurement take place? And the reason why I'm asking is, if there's anyone in the audience who is just about started on this journey, it would be a good idea to know as to how to procure such technology. How do you go about doing it in your organizations? Anyone can start.
All right, so I'll take that question. I think, like he was saying, you know, we don't have that data and how much data to collect. So I think the first thing is to ensure that you have the right set of data and you have clean and clear data, because if you don't, your base is not right, if your foundation is not right, you will not be able to make sense out of anything. So having said that, while that is happening, simultaneously you definitely need to have a buy-in from your C-suite members in terms of specifically when we are talking about HR analytics and people analytics, it's very, very important that we need to take a buy-in from them in terms of, okay, if we need data integration from various functions and collaborate with various departments to make sense out of something. Because as HR departments, like we have the major chunk of the data about people, right? And people being the biggest asset in the organization. So hence it's very, very important that the C-suite is absolutely in line with what we are wanting to do, what we want to bring on the table, simultaneously work on a clean and clear data and then look at the measurements of what kind of measurements is what we want to look at and what do we want to measure at the end of the day, because if our vision and mission is to do an X number of X amount and then work towards it and say that, okay, now these are the couple of things that we want to measure, rather than like exactly what Santosh was saying, we have too many metrics and then we need to kind of break it down and saying, okay, these are things that are not working out. And hence we need to look at very clearly saying these are the 5 things that we want to measure as a business, which will in turn look at profitability of the organization. And once we identify, the foremost thing is that you need to kind of act upon that data and make sense out of that data for the business. Like we were talking about attrition, the C-suite may not be interested to knowing as to, what is the voluntary percentage of attrition. Probably they may want to know that from that, how many performers left the organization, and then make sense out of that. So if I have had an X percentage of performers leave me, where did they go? Why did they leave? Did they join the competition? So these are things that we can make sense of, and that is what probably the C-suite may be interested, rather than just knowing, just looking at an HR dashboard which is colorful and nice. Rather than that, data which will probably make sense, and then, like I said earlier, integrate it with various departments and functions, whether it is with your CRM data which talks about customer feedback, whether it is your revenue, the sales data that we're talking about, and like earlier I said, the supply chain information that we can have. This will all help the employee to kind of perform and ultimately result into profitability of the business. And that's why I had initially also said that HR is about creating value at the marketplace, because if we don't have the marketplace, we may not have the workplace.
So CEOs, or CXO suit approval, along with your technology team, together you need to work out, because there are a lot of integrations which are in place. It can't be in silos, right? Same everywhere?
We don't have one technology, but what we thought is, one is your HR dashboards, and which our internal team, but I think what we realized is integrating our HR data with the ERP, that has helped us a lot in helping to take decisions.
So
Because
who owns that process? Who owns the business process?
So along the HR, along with the technology team. So we partner along, we can't give that ownership only to the technology, and basically inputs of the operations team also helped us a lot. So basically HR and technology, we partnered, and then we...
So is it an HR and technology partnership at Puma also?
So I'll give you one example again from Puma context. Our IT team came back and introduced a chatbot. And the chatbot ended up becoming more of a directory saying, if you have a specific question, which place should you go back and actually get that question resolved, right? So if I want to book a ticket, if that's the question which you're asking the chatbot, please go to the travel portal. Travel portal details are here. Your password will be your email ID, or your username is email ID, password is the same as your email ID, right? That's the only thing which is coming out in chatbot. And if you end up taking that as an example of how technology is getting implemented, because IT is going back and doing it in isolation, they're not really going back and looking at it, saying from an employee perspective, what does he want? What should the chatbot actually come back and give? And I might be over-trivializing the response coming out from the chatbot. But rather than it being a solution provider, it becomes one more app to have on your phones or on your laptop and on the desktop, right? So that's the piece which I think we need to try and make sure we don't fall into the trap of increasing the number of places which an employee needs to go back and log into by going back and saying that all teams have to come back together. The employee, the end user has to be a part of that decision of saying, is this the right system for me? Is this UI making sense for me? Is the UX making sense for me? So it's not only a question of saying IT, finance, and HR, but the end user, the employee also needs to be a part of that. And I don't think of course, we are all also a part of that employee group, but I think an outside-in perspective coming out from outside these three functions is definitely needed.
And Ramandeep, you're obviously part of a much, much larger conglomerate, right? And technology systems are more complex, they're more intertwined. How does it work in your case?
Yeah, well, the process essentially remains the same. Like everyone mentioned about various functions, HR, tech, the user, everyone, that remains the same. But since, our kind of a ecosystem and the overall environment, there are multiple teams who specialize into that, who make sure, before we get into the testing and, there is enough debate which has happened. And also because, there are multiple businesses, multiple lines.
Yeah.
So all that comes into play, while it is not always, we put one kind of a solution for everything. There are a lot of customization needed according to the business and the, category it is. But overall, essentially, the process remains the same.
So my takeaway from this is that from a business process perspective, it's a multifunctional collaborative model that will work, where you collaborate with the other functions and disciplines as well. And from putting a technology framework in place, you need to work very closely with your tech team. Is that a fair observation, a fair conclusion? Now, before we ask the audience for their questions, I want to ask just one question to you. The last question to you is, when you're on this path of HR analytics and on measuring employee engagement, employee contribution to profitability, what is it that one thing that you would advise folks not to do? Not to do when you're on this path? Finally, a tough question. I'll come to you last. That's by design. That's by design. I knew he would jump in. Yes.
So, I think one thing not to do as far as the entire journey is, there's a saying in the army, and I'm not from the defense, but Dad was in the defense, so I'm allowed to use the saying. The more you sweat in peacetime, the less you bleed in war, right? So what ends up happening with, I think, most analytics from an HR perspective is only when we have a problem is when we start going back and say, okay, isko baith ke analyze karo, ye kyun ho raha hai, or why is this result coming out, why is this happening, right? So what we end up doing is we end up delaying the need for us to go back and start analyzing that particular aspect of the business or of employees. And we end up delaying it too late. And hence what ends up happening is a lot of the analysis that we're doing ends up becoming very reactive. Yeah. Right? So
the messages, don't be reactive.
Don't be reactive. Be a little more, I think we need to start becoming more proactive in the type of analysis that we're coming out with.
Sure. Anjali, anything that you'd advise the audience not to do?
I think less depending upon the manual data. I think data accuracy at times, all of the time the governance of the data plays a big role. Whether in, the earlier panel we were discussing about the technology, retail technology. So the input of the data accuracy plays. So a lot of times we do a lot of biasness with the data, and there's a lot of manual inputs. So I think more we depend upon technology for any analytics, rather than doing some manual data crunching.
So what is it that they should not do?
I think the manual data crunching should not happen.
Don't go manual. Okay. Anyone else? Quickly.
I would just say don't get overwhelmed and just keep it simple. Don't complex things. And I think you will reach where you have to reach.
So keep it simple and have a pathway. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think data accuracy is very, very important. So once your base is clean and clear, I think from there on, it's important to have that in place.
So don't underestimate data accuracy and data fidelity. Very quickly, Santosh, last words from you.
One thing, as an analytics person, I would say, because it's about employees, do not trust only what comes out of analytics, because there is a lot of story that is around the data. So I would say there is a yin and yang, there is data, but there is also a lot of context which may not necessarily have answers in data. So please marry both the data as well as, whatever is the context, and then make your decision. Yeah.
And if I might just add to Santosh, there's a lot of data today. There's structured data, unstructured data, right? And you need to take all of that into consideration when you're actually drawing a conclusion. So very quickly, we've already got an eviction notice before we are physically thrown off the stage. Any quick questions from the audience?
Maybe we can take just one question.
Yes, sir.
Should I?
Can someone pass a mic on to them?
Yeah. So, any one of the panelists, what's your holy grail with respect to this overall analytics business, right? What's your holy grail? What is the ultimate thing you want to achieve out of this?
Any one of you?
No, you can't define. It's very difficult. A lot of socio-political changes happening. So you can't define just one thing that, okay, we want to reach. It depends upon your business need, your problem statement, or your any initiative that you need to take.
I think it's about getting a 10 when they ask a question of the employees in terms of how has the HR performed. And that's the holy grail. One last question. Yes, I think he was asking. Yeah.
So I believe data is like salary. The moment you have it, you realize you need more, right? So according to you, maybe what are some of those top 3 data sets or matrices which you felt were some of the most impactful ones across your years of experience? Top 3, so that others could maybe make use of that data.
From an employee performance perspective, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we briefly touched upon that through multiple conversations, but if someone can just kind of summarize it.
So I think productivity remains the top of mind of any organization. Turnover remains another critical one, and at least from a Puma perspective, number of open positions, because that's what every single manager, every single employee in the organization is chasing behind, saying, when do I get my CVs for hiring?
So in a way, number 1 and number 3 are reflective of the company and the discipline, and number 2 is about the employee, right? And so that's about it. Of course, the mother of all attributes is profitability, right? That's something that needs to be taken into account. So thank you so much, folks, for sitting so patiently through the last 1 hour. And thank you so much, folks on the panel. Appreciate all your inputs, and thank you for being so open and frank. Thank you.